Ryan Duke, the man in that chair, confessed to the murder of Tara Grinstead. He confessed with the words of his own mouth, the words expressed from his own thoughts. He convicts himself by his own words. The man in that chair, Ryan Duke, confessed to you with his words. He confessed to you in his handwriting. He confessed to you with his actions. His actions as he walked through an orchard in Fitzgerald. He confesses through his words, through his writing, and his actions. He confesses to you through his DNA. He confesses to you with his palm prints that he is the murderer, the killer of Tara Grinstead. The monster he doesn't want to be. The monster he hides from everyone. He confesses to you. You've all heard it. 34 ears. You heard it. 34 eyes. You saw it. He confesses to you that he murdered Tara Grinstead.
It is Wednesday, February the 22nd, 2017, at approximately 12:52 a.m., located at the Ocilla Police Department. Interviewing Ryan Duke, pursuant to the current investigation. You didn't ask me yesterday, and I guess we can get around to it, but do you have any idea why I've asked you to come down here today?
I got a pretty good idea. It's pretty steady.
Okay. And I'm going to be taking notes and as we're dialoguing back and forth. Don't think I'm ignoring you. Remember, we are just audio recording it, so anything you say, if it's a yes or no.
Yes, sir, I understand.
Okay. What makes you think it's about Tara?
I was involved with it, man.
Okay. Tell me what happened.
I used to break into people's houses just to steal money. I was a drug addict. I've been drinking. I was high. I don't remember everything clearly.
Okay.
But I was stealing from a purse, and she snuck up on me, and I hit her. I didn't mean to. You look reactionary, but and I ran. I didn't know what else to do.
Okay.
That's the only reason I didn't come forward before.
Okay.
I can't lie. I can't live with myself. I'm so sick of this stuff.
I think there's other people that feel the same way you do too, don't you think?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm tired. And my family's good people. I didn't want to do this to them.
Okay. Let's take a breath. You want something to drink?
No, sir.
Okay.
I thought about this. It seemed like my world has been loosed by a thread, and I've been holding on to that thread for so long. I fucking wrapped up.
Well, you're doing the right thing.
No, sir, I'm not.
Right now you are.
If I'd been a man, I'd have done something.
It doesn't matter when.
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Fear is fear. But you're doing the right thing now.
I don't feel like it.
Well, I'm telling you,
No.
having done this for a long time, this is very, I can see it on your face. I could tell yesterday that this was bothering you. Alright, slow down. Let's back up a little.
Okay.
What night did you go to her house?
so strung out. I was working at a factory, working 70-some hours a week. And it was in September, I think. Later in the year, the fall, the exact year, I don't know. Everything's just been upside down since then.
Okay. Went to her house. How did you get into her house?
It's easy. Like a deadbolt, you can pop the lock real easy. I mean, I broke in people. I never steal more than $20. I'm just not proud of it. You know, I know this is just work.
Okay. I'm going to just pause for 1 second because what you're telling me is information, I want you to keep talking to me. But because of where we're going with this, I know that you've never been in real major trouble before.
I understand. I'm going to prison.
And I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, moving forward, I want to make you aware of your rights. I have to.
I'll waive my right to a lawyer.
Okay. Well, I'm going to read that form to you and let you do that. Okay. And I'm going to put the current time. I know we started at 12:52, but I'm going to put the current time, okay? I understand. It doesn't matter, though. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through it together, okay? You're, what, 33 now? 32?
33, I think.
You graduated from high school, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you finish any college or anything?
No, sir. I did a year at ABA.
So I'm going to put to the side 1 year college. I'm going to assume that you can read, write, and understand English.
Yes, sir.
Do you take any medications or anything?
I'm supposed to take a little pile of them, but
Or have you taken any today or in the last couple hours?
yes, sir, I took a painkiller this morning.
Okay. Does it affect you in any way whatsoever?
I'm mentally and physically cognitive.
Okay. All right.
Defense wants to talk about hiding things. They can't even decide for themselves whether Ryan's telling the truth about taking a pain pill, a Percocet, Vicodin, marijuana, and everything else. Because he doesn't tell the truth. They want you to believe he's telling you the truth on the stand and not in his statement when he said, I'm overwhelmed with guilt because I murdered her. You know he's a liar. You know that.
You let her be missing, right?
Actually, she died when I hit her. I lived, and
She died, and I left. She died, and I left. And he tells you how he did it. He says, I hit her. Now, Miss Merchant and I disagree on what I have to prove. You will not hear the judge charge you in the way that she said that. The judge will charge you on the law. Miss Merchant is not the giver of the law. The court will give you the law. This defendant told you what he did. The state has the burden of proof in this case. It is beyond a reasonable doubt. The judge will charge you on beyond a reasonable doubt. That does not mean beyond all doubt. It's not what it means. The charge will tell you that. It does not mean to a mathematical certainty. You don't have to put a percentage on it. That's not what it means. It's not, as you've heard sometimes, beyond a shadow of any doubt. That's not what it means. It is the doubt of a fair-minded, impartial juror honestly seeking the truth. That's what we asked you to do. You all said you could be fair and impartial during jury selection. You could set aside all the media talk and conspiracy theories and listen to the evidence in the courtroom. That's what you said you could do. Took an oath to do. And seek the truth. You're truth seekers today. That's what the state asks you to do, is seek truth. They want you to list questions and look for doubt. I want you to seek the truth. Be truth seekers. And the truth is, exactly what came out of his mouth is he hit Tara Grinstead in her home and he left. We're going to talk some more about that. So they want to say the state's going to play excerpts of the statements. You won't have the statements back with you in the jury room, but you're welcome to come back and listen to all of it. I can't play all of it because I don't have it's over 2 hours long. I only have 2 hours to give you a closing argument, and I'm not going to do that. You won't have it back with you, but you can come listen to all of it. But yes, I'm going to play you excerpts where he tells you he did it. And they want you to reward the man because he burned her body. That's what they want you to do. They want you to give him a prize and a reward because he took her body from her home out to an orchard and had his buddy, Bo, burn him with it. That's what they want. Who's hiding stuff from you? He is.
And came back out again and did it again maybe a couple times over the next couple days.
I sure went back once and burned trash.
Over the same spot.
Yes.
Burn trash over her. This is why you believe it. Trash. Trash, 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 trash. He told you on the witness stand what? I only went out there that one time. You know what he says in his statement? We went back out there again and we threw some household trash on her. Physical evidence doesn't lie, ladies and gentlemen. Trash. Household trash. He's got a lot to lose, so he's got a lot. Trash. They brought in an ex-girlfriend and another girl to say he was nice to women. He thought so much of Tara, burned her like common household trash. That's how he thought of women. Hiding stuff. You remember one of the young ladies, Miss Daniels, I believe is her name, from Tallahassee. How did she describe him in high school? He was carefree. Not burdened and depressed. I didn't see that side of him.
Although ashamed of what I've done, thinking all night last night, I considered myself a good person, but how can I be?
Accidents happen.
I'm sure it does. Out of fear, our family has suffered.
Long time.
About in this statement, her family, Mr. Billy and Miss Connie and Anita, have suffered long enough. But even 5 years later, he's still making them suffer. As he tortured and lost the soul of Tara Grinstead, he still tortures their souls that are present here today. The first count in the indictment is what's called malice murder. The judge will charge you on the offenses. What the state is required to prove, contrary to what Ms. Merchant told you, what the state is required to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt are the elements of the offense. That's what we're required to prove to you. The defendant admits in his statement that he murdered her, that he killed her, and he left. I struck her, I hit her with my hand. And you heard what even their great Dr. Talitsky, the psychologist, said, those were great questions. Just tell me what happened. And he tells him what happens. No tricks, no techniques. He just tells him what happens. We're going to talk more about Dr. Tulipsky a little bit later. But he admits to malice murder. The judge will charge you that the state is not required to prove premeditation. We don't have to prove that he planned to go over there and kill Tara Grinstead. Not required for malice murder. The judge will charge you that the state is not even required to prove motive to you. Not a requirement. So he tells you what his motive was, but we're not even required to do that. He tells you his motive was, I'm a drug addict, and I need money to buy drugs, and I break in people's houses, and I steal $20. And I was going through her purse. Who brings up her purse? He does. I was going through her purse, and she surprised me. Who puts her in her house where she was killed? He does. Who puts venue in Irwin County where she was killed? He does. His own mouth. His own words. It's not me making something up. It's not me talking about a theory, or maybe this was that, or maybe this was there. No, he puts it in her house, in her purse, which is a burglary. We'll talk about burglary some more in a minute. Malice murder. No premeditation is required for us to prove. No motive is required for the state to prove, although you have his statement of what his motive was. The judge will charge you that malice can be either express or implied. And the judge will charge you that that can be determined from the circumstances surrounding the event. The same malice, I'm left-handed, with which you punch someone is enough. Malice is just that deliberate intent to do harm. When he struck her and hit her, he deliberately intended to harm her. And that the judge will charge you that can be formed in an instant. When she surprises him and he turns around not to get caught in a burglary in her home, this single woman, he punches her with intent to harm. And then from the circumstances before, during, and after, you can, by his conduct and what he says, he goes and hides the body and burns it almost beyond recognition. And the judge will charge you about an abandoned and malignant heart. And if that's not what an abandoned and malignant heart is, you kill someone after you've broken in their home, and you go and you burn their body so furiously and fiery that DNA can't even be extracted from her bones. He tells you he was dead in her house several times. That's the venue in Irwin County. And even if you believe the lies he told on the witness stand, he tells you that she was dead in Irwin County when he called to check on her from the 411 call. Because he's the Good Samaritan. Now, come on. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But malice murder, again, that's where we are. The judge will tell you about implied malice. There is implied malice here. The deliberate intention to kill is the intent to harm someone can be formed in an instant. You have that here present, and the state has proven to you that out of his own mouth, and then by his conduct after what happens. Count 2 of the indictment is what's called felony murder. And count 2 charges him Count 2 of the indictment is felony murder that he did during the commission of an aggravated assault. Aggravated assault, the judge will charge you as a felony. And when he strikes Miss Grinstead, by use of an instrument, being hands. Miss Merchant said it was a deadly weapon. That's not how it's charged. It's an instrument. It is just an offensive weapon. A hand is an offensive weapon. She said deadly weapon in her closing argument, but that's not how it's charged in the indictment. Again, something else she got wrong. It's an offensive weapon when used against someone is likely to result in serious bodily injury. We know he does because she dies. And that's aggravated assault. And if you kill someone in the course of that, that's called felony murder. That's count 2. You have another count of felony murder that in the course of a burglary, which is also a felony, as the judge will charge you, that causes her murder. He tells you that in his own statement. He puts the venue in Irwin County. Her home is in Irwin County. All the agents told you that. You all know exactly where it is. There's not one single piece of evidence. Even he says she was already dead in the orchard in Fitzgerald. There's not one single piece of evidence. We'll talk about the car in a little bit too. All the smoke and mirrors from that they want to say. We'll talk about it. So count 3 of the indictment is a felony murder while in the course of the burglary. That he intended to enter her home with the intent to commit a theft therein. And count 4 of the indictment is the aggravated assault count. That he did use his hand as an offensive weapon. You see, his hand, an object which when used offensively. Doesn't say anything about a deadly weapon. Miss Merchant just got that wrong. As she did many other things. Hand is an offensive weapon. Because when used offensively against someone else, it is likely to and can result in serious bodily harm, and the serious bodily harm here is her death. And in the course of that aggravated assault, he caused her death, which corresponds to count 2, which is the felony murder. And count 5, please, is burglary. Burglary is when someone enters your residence without authority or permission with the intent to commit a theft therein. The theft doesn't even have to occur. If someone enters your home and they are looking for something to steal and you catch them in the act, the burglary is complete. The judge will never say you have to get something out of the house before it's a burglary. That's not the law. If they enter your home with the intent to commit a theft, that is a burglary. His intent, he tells you, I was breaking in people's homes to steal money and I was going through her purse. That's a burglary. The state has proven to you that by his own statement. We're going to talk about corroboration of the statement in a little bit too. But that is a burglary. The state has proven to you each element of each of those offenses beyond a reasonable doubt that he's the one that did it. Because he tells you. His own mouth, his own handwriting, his own actions. He confesses. And then count 6 of the indictment is concealing the death of another. That he did conceal the death of Miss Grinstead, of whether or not she was unlawfully killed, by removing her body from 300 West Park Street in Ocilla. He concealed her death when he takes it, as he says, and volunteers. Remember in that statement, people tell you what they want you to know. What they think is important to them. Right? That's what you say to people. You want them to know what you think is important. And what does he tell Agent Shadell? Because, you know what? He's a nice, respectful guy to ladies. And that's what he wants Agent Shadell to understand. Because he'll use those terms like, I gotta quit. After I hit her and struck her, and I left, I gotta quit. Miss Grinstead. And I got a quilt. And we didn't burn her body beyond we cremated her. Because I'm a nice guy. I'm not that monster that I've hidden from everybody else. But he told him and volunteered that little detail. And that's an important detail because you know what? Agent Shadell doesn't talk about going and getting the quilt or going. He doesn't talk about that. He asked him about the gloves. How does he know it's translucent? How would he know that? How would he know that Bo went and got a glove, a translucent glove, and went and planted it on him? It doesn't make sense. Smoke and mirrors. That's all that is. That's them hiding stuff from you. Agent Shadell just said, what about gloves? And he adds that other important detail. Translucent. Translucent. How did you know that? Because he tells you on the witness stand, Bo didn't tell me anything about what happened. Bo never told me anything. Bo never told me anything other than he killed Tara. He knew about a translucent glove that Bo supposedly planted on. Translucent. What? It could have been a driving glove, a leather glove, a winter glove. But he says translucent. And what is it? Translucent. That's why you know he's guilty. So, they had that little thing about the glove, all these questions. I'm not required to answer these questions. The judge will never say in anything he gives you that I'm required to. I'm not. And that's not even reasonable doubt. The glove. How does the glove corroborate that? How's he going to know about it? If he wasn't there and knew he used it, and then Agent Shadell asked him, is your DNA going to be on it? Yeah, it came from my house. How did he know? Bo didn't tell him he said that. How did he know that? Because he was there. He was the one that left it. He'd been talking about any kind of glove. But he knew it was translucent. An important detail that he wanted Agent Shadell to know. So let's talk about this confession and how it's corroborated. Let's talk about this glove. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very important for you to recall Lisa Hobgood, Crime Lab, 2005. Kind of silver hair, gray-haired lady. You remember her? The forensic biologist from 2005. As she testified to you, my first case ever of what? Touch DNA. We've done DNA with a lot of blood, a lot of semen, a lot of saliva, or sweat from a brim of a hat, but we've never done skin cell or touch DNA. Her first case she had ever worked. So, their theory, Bo Dukes, he knew to plant that glove so we could get some touch DNA off it. Doesn't make any sense. But he knew his DNA would be on it. In fact, this defendant talks about that translucent glove and how it corroborates. And guess what Bo, if he planted it, also knew? Do you remember what Ashley Hinkle told you? She was the second biologist that tested the glove in 2017-18, somewhere one of those years, the later. She said, I swabbed the inside of the glove, and it was 90% Ryan Duke's DNA and 10% of Tara Grinstead's DNA. Consistent with Ryan having worn the inside of the glove. And if Bo just planted it, how did it get Tara's DNA on there unless that mixture of Ryan and Tara's DNA wasn't on there? Because he dropped it. It's what he used. And then you heard her say, I swabbed the outside of the glove. And do you remember what the percentages were on the outside of the glove? 50-50. 50% his and 50% Tara's. And also, on the outside of that glove was someone's DNA. We don't know whose it is. I know the defense says that the state, the GBI, tried to exclude both. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm okay if you include both. Doesn't matter to me. Maybe it is Bo's DNA. I can't say that it isn't. I can't say that it is. But Bo just happened to plant this glove, the DNA right in percentages. And got Tara's DNA on the inside and the outside. When we didn't even know we could get DNA in 2005. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They asked you to use common sense. That doesn't even fit common sense. And so while we're talking about the glove, let's talk about Jared Luke, who went over to get his dog, and let's talk about Heath Dykes. All right, they want to say that glove had to be planted, and it had to be planted by Bo Dukes after Heath Dykes left. That's their theory. Because they would have seen it. What did Mr. Luke, a high school kid at the time, tell you? I went over there to get my dog. Is he looking for trash in somebody's yard? When you go up to somebody's house, are you looking for trash in their yard? Or you don't know. You're just going to get your dog. A high school kid going to be noticing trash in somebody's yard? It just doesn't make sense. The glove was there. He just didn't see it. Just didn't see it. Because you're not looking for trash in somebody's yard. They don't even know Tara's missing at that point. No one does. Right? This is Sunday. People are calling for her. Miss Faye is desperately calling. Heath has been calling. No one knows she's missing. No one's looking for trash. No one's looking for evidence. They want to hold a high school kid, Jared Luke, who's going to get his dog bowl, his dog accessories as he was calling it. They want to hold him to the standard of investigators, looking around her yard for evidence of why she's... That's silly, ridiculous. No high school kid is doing that. And then they want to say that Heath Dykes, he's a trained investigator, and he is. Ladies and gentlemen, Heath Dykes was concerned about one thing that night. The lady that he was having a relationship with was not calling him back. Y'all heard his desperation in his voice on those answering machine calls. In fact, he was so desperate he drove down here to find out why she wasn't returning his calls and why she wasn't calling him back. And he told you what? What time was it? You remember? It was dark. In fact, I think he said close to midnight. So midnight, 1 a.m. on Saturday. And he says, we asked him, did you have a flashlight? No. He says, yeah, he did say, I think I would have seen it. He's not looking for, they're wanting to say he's out there searching for evidence on the ground outside. He is desperately knocking on that door, trying to get Tara to answer the door. Calling her on the phone, leaving a card on the door. He's not looking outside in the yard for evidence in the case. That's not what he's there for. That glove was there. It's dark. He just didn't see it. He's not looking for trash in her yard at midnight. He's looking for her. He's looking for her. That's the most logical, and that makes sense. He just didn't see it. Because he's not looking for trash in her yard. Not. But must have been planted. And remember, something else important you got to remember. What does Heath Dykes tell you at midnight, Saturday night, Sunday? I checked the hood of her car. It's cold to the touch. The car hadn't gone anywhere. Been right there. cold to the touch, which means what? She hadn't been driving it. That's what that trained investigator did. He was looking for her and where she might have gone, or was she there, or where she was. Not looking for evidence in the yard of a piece of trash, a glove. Not looking for that. That doesn't come in until she doesn't show up for school. And then Joe Portier even told, remember Mr. Portier, the older fella, older gentleman? Next door neighbor, good neighbor that everybody wants? Mr. Portier said, I even took the spare key over to the house and I didn't see the glove when I was walking up to her front door. He's not looking for that. He's looking for her, trying to find her. He says, no, when I came out of the house and I was calling Chief Hancock, that's when I saw it. I was standing on the front porch on the phone and I see it out in front of me. And it's morning. It's light outside. And it's there. That's what he tells you. That glove was there. The big secret, they don't like it because it makes their client guilty. So they have to come up with some other alternate theory. It must have been, Bo, there's not been one witness from that witness stand that ever told you that Bo planted that glove. Not one. They just throw up conjecture and speculation, hoping that that's what you'll follow. But you raised your hand and swore an oath to seek the truth. Not follow their red herrings and not follow their smoke and mirrors. So let's talk about the car, since I'm on the car. They want to talk about the car. That Mr. Olmsted and Mr. Harper. Y'all remember Mr. Olmsted and Mr. Harper? They testified right in a row. I cross-examined both of them. Mr. Harper said on direct that although she said it was midnight, and one of them did in their closing that it was midnight, you'll remember the testimony. That's not what he testified to. He said he got up early that morning. I remember that because I cross-examined him. I said, sir, in your statement to the GBI, you said you didn't get up until about noon. No, sir, I remember I got up that morning and I walked to the Swanee Swifty. Get something that morning. He didn't say midnight. Not what he said. But you trust your notes, you trust your memory, not what Miss Merchant says and not what I say. You trust what you remember. But that's what I asked him on the witness stand. And he said, no, sir, that was that morning. And he said, after that, I don't know. And then they put up his roommate after him to say that he didn't see the car. He said it was that afternoon. Not that morning, that afternoon he said about 3 or 4. Because you know why? He said, I slept till noon. He said that he admitted he slept till noon that day. So he didn't know what happened that morning. He didn't even remember his roommate getting up. Although his roommate's statement said it was about noon and testified here it was that morning. He just doesn't remember. Both of those good people, not trying to just trying to be helpful. That's all. They're just wrong. Living there across the street, whatever day. It may have been that her car was gone or not. They're just wrong. And then remember when I asked his roommate, and you and your roommate went to Wendy's to get something to eat about 4 that afternoon. Yes, sir. And that's when you saw the car not there. Yes, sir. And his roommate didn't even say that. He said it was early that morning when he went to the Swanee Swifty. He said nothing about Wendy's. They're just it's a long time ago. They're just mistaken. That's all it is. They're just mistaken. All of those other witnesses said the car was there when they drove by. Heath Dykes tells you it was cold to the touch when he was there. The car never left. The car's not an issue. In fact, in Ryan Duke's own statement to you, his videotape confession, car's not an issue. They want to make the car an issue to make you look somewhere else away from the truth, away from his statement, away from the glove, his DNA, and his fingerprints. Because the car, we got to get the car out of there. We got to get her away from the house because she wasn't killed at the house. But that's because they need to get away from what their plot says. They don't want to talk about that statement. Notice they didn't play the statement for you. They want to say hiding stuff from you. Why didn't they play something of it? Because they know the statement makes him guilty. That's why. So let's talk about the palm prints. It's his palm prints in the glove. So his DNA is in the glove at a 90-10%, a 50-50% on the outside, and also his palm prints in a glove. Now let's talk about this for a second. They want to say it's a plant. They get up here and they attack Miss Hinkle, who testifies that she found his DNA, and they want to say that, oh, they didn't follow procedures and didn't do this and did that. And then they want to attack Miss Worley about her identification that she really didn't identify. What? Innocent people only need one defense. If Bo planted it, so what if it's his DNA? So what? But they want to fight that too. Why? Because it makes their client guilty of all of it. With every question that they ask, with every witness that they call, you remember their client confessed. Who's hiding things from you? Who's trying to misdirect you and make you go a different direction? That table. With that defendant in that chair. Let's talk about her home. Miss Grinstead, they want to say there's no crime scene at the home and investigators couldn't say, you know what, it's a fair statement. The investigators couldn't say one way or the other whether it's a crime scene or a sign of a struggle or not. Fair enough. I think that's a fair assessment of the evidence. But one interpretation of the evidence is that in fact there was a struggle there and that something happened in that bedroom or in that house and that defendant told you it did. So there is physical evidence that supports that it happened in that house. What did Maria Hewlett tell you? Maria, I forgot her last name now. The alarm clock down on the floor blinking 12. What else did she tell you? Well, the other young lady that was there for the beauty pageants, I forget her name at the moment, but pretty young lady that came in and talked to you about being over there for those drawers were pulled out. That's not the way out. She said she came back after they left. There were extra drawers pulled out in those dressers. Top drawer, bottom drawer. Where are you going to trip over when you leave that one out? And I agree with Mr. Merchant. Ladies aren't going to leave those throw pillows on there. They're going to take those off. We're not saying she was asleep in the bed. What does he say? He says she came up behind him and surprised him. But that can be evidence of a struggle. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. So there is evidence in the home that there was a struggle. Oh. Remember where that glove was found in the border of the landscaping? What's in her bedroom floor? You want to tell me Tara Grinstead's going to leave pine straw laying around on her floor? Lampshade is askew. May or may not be anything, but it may be something. I mean, I turn mine. You probably turn yours to get some better lighting. But it may be. So, even though we can't say that there definitely was, there is evidence that there could have been. In fact, drawers pulled out. And that chest is off center down there at the bottom of the bed. Right away when you trip over it. Tara, or the young lady that testified that Tara was helping them with the beauty pageant, said they didn't even get dressed in her bedroom. They got dressed in the kitchen area. Another shot, drawers pulled out. And a candle on its side. A candle on its side. So again, investigators want to be truthful. We can't say more than that, but there is evidence that something could have happened in that bedroom. And there's blood on the comforter. let's talk about this phone call. The defense has to come up with a theory that explains that phone call because the GBI agents, Rothwell, Shadell, they all told you what? That's guilty knowledge. They hid that from everybody. So they've got to explain that phone call. So the way they come up with explaining it is, he's a good Samaritan. You saw them attack the phone records when we were putting the phone. They didn't want those phone records in from North Coast Pay, the payphone. They objected to those documents going into evidence. Who's trying to hide something from you? And then their client gets up on the stand and admits it, that he made it. Who's hiding stuff from you? Well, where's the smoke and mirrors? Sorry, Ms. Hart. Go ahead.
So you said you went to, what kind of phone did you use?
This is a payphone.
You remember which store it was?
The T&G now.
The one right next to FedEx?
Yes, sir.
So you went to the payphone there, you said?
Yes.
And how did you call the house? What did you do?
I dialed 411 to get the number because I put the answer and verify.
You were hoping that she would answer the phone, and when she did, you knew something was wrong.
Yes, sir.
What did you do to clean up? You said you woke.
The phone records. Why do you believe his statement, his videotape confession? Because the physical evidence corroborates it. Physical evidence doesn't lie to you. People will lie to you, no doubt. But physical evidence that corroborates it, just like you've got evidence corroborating a struggle in the room. Doesn't have to be, but it does. Phone records corroborate that phone call. On her caller ID in the North Coast pay records. And he's the one in that statement that volunteers, I made a call. He asked him about phone calls. He does. Agent Shadell does. But then, you know what he says? I made a call from a payphone. Not from Agent Shadell. Aunt the Swanee Swifty. Just right here by our house. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about that just for a second. You're living in Fitzgerald by the hospital in a trailer. You're not going to dial from your home phone to check on Miss Grinstead? What about a payphone in Fitzgerald? You're going to drive 10 miles to Ocilla to make a call from a payphone? Just to return her purse. You don't go to the police and say, Miss Grinstead's purse, I found it, needs to get it returned to her. You don't go to the police in Fitzgerald and say that. You don't go to the sheriff's office in Ben Hill County and say, I've got Miss Grinstead's purse, just wanted to get it returned to her. Didn't know if something happened to her, y'all go check on her. Don't go to the Ocilla Police Department when you get down here. You don't go to the Irvine County Sheriff's Office. You go to a payphone. Don't call from your home phone. You drive back down to the scene of the crime. And ladies and gentlemen, he tells you in his statement that he calls her he told you on the witness stand he called her to check on her. He tells you in his statement he called because, remember what he said? No cops were around. Yeah, it's church time in Ocilla. People are going back and forth to church. He's calling to to disguise who he's calling. Because 401 comes up payphone. So if he called from his home phone, it's his number that comes up. Or his relative. And he's calling to make sure nobody's found her body yet. That there aren't police already there. He doesn't leave a message. Miss Grinstead, I have your purse. Found it. Wanted to check on you, make sure you're okay. Hangs up. And ladies and gentlemen, to get that glove right, for Bo to plant it, in their theory of the case, it doesn't even make sense. Because Bo would have had to have planted it after Heath Dykes was there midnight Sunday morning and before Joe Portier sees it, before they all go over there, and get Tara's DNA and Ryan's DNA and Ryan's with Bo every time after that. It doesn't even compute. It's impossible. But that's what they're stuck with because that's what the client did. What else corroborates his statement? He tells you in his statement, I knew who it was because of the picture on her wall. And guess what Tara had, as Agent Roster told you, or Agent Baudry, I think he said, I went and got her picture off her wall. If he wasn't in that house, how did he know that she would have a picture of herself on her wall by herself? He doesn't say, I saw family pictures on the wall. I saw a picture of her on the wall. That's why you believe. Physical evidence doesn't lie. And what he tells you matches the physical evidence. The trash. The house. Blood on her comforter. You know, again, we can't tell you. I'm not trying to say whether it's menstrual blood, whether it's blood from this. Can't say. But there's blood there. He wants to say it's consistent with sex or a monthly cycle. Maybe it is. You heard every witness. We can't tell you. But it's also some evidence that a struggle occurred there. Inside that bedroom, there's evidence that you can believe circumstantially, and circumstantial evidence and direct evidence the judge will instruct you, you can give them the same weight. Direct evidence is like he hit her. He confessed to doing it. That's direct evidence. Circumstantial evidence is other things that corroborate that, and you give them equal weight. They're not different. You don't give them different weight. You can give them equal weight. In this video, talk about with his actions, with his motions, with his hands. He tells you what he did. You don't lie about that. He says, I picked her up and I carried her out of the house in a quilt. She was so small. And he does this motion.
Just put it over your shoulder. You see you have a back of the quilt though, right?
She was so small. And I just carried her to the truck in the quilt and took her to the orchard. We know she was home that night because these are the clothes she wore to the pageant. Picture of her at the pageant. The coat she has there in her hand. And he tells you that he broke in her home because he's a drug addict, needing money for drugs. He also confesses to you in his own handwriting. And ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't say, I'm scared of Bo Dukes. He doesn't say, scared for my family. That's something he's told you 5 years later. Never told that any of that took place. Ryan Duke. Words are useless. But I am burdened with the guilt of murdering Miss Grinstead. That picture, he's burdened with her guilt of murdering her. His own handwriting, his own words. He doesn't say burning her body or both forcing me to burn her body. He says murdering her. I am burdened with the guilt of murdering Miss Grinstead. I don't feel like I deserve to be free to breathe. I can't begin to comprehend the pain I have caused to her family and loved ones. Changed his mind about all that, apparently, as they still said. Months of misery, years of torment. I don't feel like I need to live with the pain I've caused. The things I have done are a double-edged sword with no handle. All that get near me are woefully injured. I can't take back the things I have done, but I hope today is the first step to being a good person. A title I don't deserve or merit. I am sorry for everything. The stupid, cowardly way I have hidden the truth. Still hiding it today. He hid it for 12 years, and he continues 5 years later, still hiding the truth. May God forgive me because I can't and won't. He confessed to burning her body. While we're talking about burning her body, I want to talk about a few things. Let's talk about motives. I couldn't stand before you and tell you that Bo Dukes is a good person. He ain't, in good South Georgia language. Bo Dukes a liar? Yes. In fact, in Wilcox County, Georgia, see that name at the bottom down there? It says Bradford L. Rigby District Attorney. That's me. He was charged with making a false statement. Count one, that he did. Falsify and cover up that he confessed. Cover up that Ryan Duke had confessed to him that Ryan Alexander Duke killed Tara Grinstead. A material fact in her disappearance. That's all they should do. He was also in Wilcox County charged with making a false statement, hindering apprehension of Ryan Duke, and concealing the death of another. 4 different counts that Bo Dukes was convicted of in Wilcox County and is in prison for, as they marched him in here in his prison clothes, paraded him before you as some big spectacle for the media. But that's what media lawyers do. Convicted in Wilcox County and is serving a sentence of 25 years. Did I hide him from you? I didn't hide him from you. I'm not going to put a convicted liar on the witness stand. You would look at me like I was crazy, putting up a man I convicted for lying. And lying about the fact that he covered up Ryan's confession. Hide anything from you? And they knew good well he was going to take the Fifth Amendment. He's got pending charges in Ben Hill County. He had his lawyer here. Of course he's going to take the Fifth Amendment. They want to talk about their client and his rights. He has rights too. Of course he is. That was all for you, for a show, for drama, for television. That's all it's about. Bo Dukes is not a good person. Never said he was. Never heard that come out of my mouth, Ms. Hart's mouth, or any other witnesses. Not because it's not the truth. He's not a good person. He's a liar. I convicted him of lying. Charged him with lying. Convicted him of lying. He's got a bad reputation. I don't dispute that. But let's talk about it. Who's his best friend? Every time I see one, I see the other. They're always together. Ladies and gentlemen, they made you think this was about power and influence and Bo's family having power and influence. The man serving 25 years in prison. And Bo had so much power, he was living in a trailer with Ryan Duke. His family. Ryan even told you his mom had kicked him out. His family didn't want anything to do with it. He had such power and influence. They want to talk about power and influence. Oh, the state was influenced by Representative Duke Hudson from the grave, apparently. So influential, Bo Duke's got 25 years in prison. That's how influential. He still has pending charges. Not one email, not one text, not one phone call from anybody that they put into evidence to show power and influence in how this case was done. Because it doesn't exist. You hold them to that too. They're going to tell you they're going to prove something. Prove it. They can't. Didn't happen. Maybe fun to talk about and fun to think about conspiracies and how that didn't happen. Bo Dukes is not a good person, but who's his best friend? Who's always with him? Who lived with him before and after the murder? Who even went to the ABAC and lived in the dorm with him? This defendant. Oh, I didn't know how to get away from him and get out of it. Oh, I'm going to live with him in ABAC in the dorm. After he's ruined my life and made me Tara Grinstead. Scared of Bo. I'm scared of Bo. Come on now. And ladies and gentlemen, if Bo had done this, Bo doesn't need Ryan's help. It's Bo's truck, Bo's orchard. Ryan needed Bo's help. He didn't have a vehicle to carry her body. He had to get Bo's. He put her out on Bo's family's property. He needed Bo's help. Ladies and gentlemen, they put in a conviction for Bo Dukes for stealing from the military. And he did. He's convicted of it. I'm never going to tell you he's not a thief and not a good person and not a liar. He is. Convicted of it. Best friend, though, is Ryan Duke. What did Ryan tell you? Ryan didn't steal from the military. He stole from his own brother. Remember what he told you? I forged some checks on my brother. Don't you think if he just asked his brother, hey, can I have $50? He'd have given him $50? Of course his brother would. Stephen Dukes is a good person. But he stole from it. You want to talk about character? That's character. Bo steals, Ryan steals. I can tell you, they want to talk about character evidence. Everybody said Ryan was peaceable and Ryan's truthful. They put in some witnesses to say he had good character, that they knew him back in high school. Not really around this time, but fair enough. They put the evidence in. There's a man that would have had 11 character witnesses walk down here and come up on the witness stand and raise their hand and say, this man is truthful and honest. He wouldn't do anything. He's a person of good character. We trusted him. We would trust him with our money. In fact, we do trust him with our money. and they would have all testified to his good character. But that same person is the one that betrayed with a kiss. In the garden. All of the disciples would have said, not Judas. As he was the thief. They didn't know that about his character. Right? They were even asking at the upper room, who would do this? Because sometimes people hide who they are. Just like he did. Bo was just open about his deviance. But his best friend just hides it better. You all know people like that. They go to church and they're one way, and they're out of church, they're something else. They just hide it a little better than others. Bo's just out front with who he is. Remember Garland Lott, young man that was their high school friend out at the orchard. They want to talk about Ryan getting up and crying about helping burn her body. But 2 to 3 weeks after it happened, what was Ryan doing about it? Laughing. The statement was, again, Mr. Lott told you, I can't remember who said it. It was one of them. They were both in the truck, and one of them said, we killed her and we burned her body. And they were both laughing about it. As he laughed in this courtroom. That's how much he respected women and respected Tara Grinstead. That's who he is. Says he's not a liar. He's a truthful person. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard him on the witness stand. We impeached him with his own lies out of his own mouth. You told Zach Gerard on a phone call, and you heard the phone call, and this is his respect for women. He's on a phone call that he knows is recorded saying, I had sex, I screwed Tara Grinstead, and I was screwing her from high school. Oh, but that's all a lie. Because that's about the media.
I do my family, man. I just fucked up my life. I know I destroy hers and her family's. But all things get different. You know, me not leaving with, you know, the 8,000 million fucking possibilities got their head, tried to treat it however good, drugs, alcohol. I mean, alcohol got killed me. Just that kind of big deal, this wasn't. It's been passed through. I'll take it back, no matter how much I will it, want it, pray for it.
I can kind of see it. It's coming off of you a little bit the more we're talking. I mean, you're upset, but you're not like you were when we first started.
I had all night with myself. I mean, I went through every lie I could have told. The only fucking voice I kept hearing was just tell the fucking truth. Be a man for once. I tried to be the person that people thought I could be.
The man he was scared of, he Facebook messages. Hey man, just wanted to say hey. After all these years. And that's when the GBI comes and talks to him. But he's scared. But the one who's been living in his trailer, he goes and lives way back with. And then we disproved that he was telling you the truth because Zane Deal came in here and Cliff Benson came in here and said, I've never been to a house where Bo and Ryan lived in Fitzgerald. Not the trailer and not the house. And Bo never said any of that to me. Who's lying to you? Who stands to lose the most? Didn't happen. And they said that, he testified, heaven forbid they got off script. And we lost our pages for a few minutes and we just couldn't even continue the testimony because we got off script. Who's playing games with you? They want to attack the DNA and attack the fingerprints, but then, well, of course, the glove's planted. An innocent man just needs one defense. They don't need, oh, it's not that, it's not his DNA, it's not his fingerprints, it's not this, it's not that, it's not. It's planted. Not his phone call. He didn't make that phone call. Don't want the phone call. Oh, he's going to admit he made the phone call. We're going to put up Dr. Talitsky to talk about the statement and how Jason Shadell used all these terrible techniques and everything else, and then they're going to put their client and say, I was just going in there to confess. Why? Smoke and mirrors, ladies and gentlemen. And apparently, since his personality assessment that you've probably all taken one like, apparently he's changed on the stand. Just smoke and mirrors. Not one expert from DNA or fingerprints that they call to say it wasn't his print or wasn't his DNA. Not one. They could have. Let's talk about the door lock. Let's talk about her shoes and yoga pants since they want to talk about those things. I'm not required to prove those or answer any questions about this, but let's talk about it because I'm not afraid of it. I'm not hiding anything from you. There was evidence that, yes, she would normally lock that top lock. What did Maria Hewlett, I can't remember her married name now. What did she tell you, though? Her best friend. If she was expecting company, she wouldn't lock the top lock. And ladies and gentlemen, we all have habits, and you know what? There are times when I forget to lock my front door. And maybe if I'm not ready to go to bed yet, maybe if I'm still up and moving about in my house, I'm not going to lock my front door even though that's my habit. It just hasn't been done yet. There's not one person that's come in here to you and told you that she locked that night. Not one. Brian Duke burned her in her yoga pants. And did you see Maria? Oh, and Maria also told you, as remember when Maria testified, she said, Tara and I have locked ourselves out of that house. Sometimes we just use a credit card to pop it. It was easy. What did Ryan tell you in his statement? It was easy. Pop it. The credit card. Oh, what was their response to that? Did you check and see if Ron ever had a credit card? Who's playing games with you and smoking mirrors? Does it have to be his credit card? Can he just get his dad's or his brother's or stolen one from the houses he's broken into? Just games they play. Seek the truth. Be truth seekers, not doubt seekers. He confessed his DNA. We talked about that on the glove. 90%, 10% on the inside, 50-50 on the outside. We had that in 2000. We had his DNA in 2005, ladies and gentlemen. Just didn't have it matched to him at that point. But we had an unknown male contributor's DNA in 2005, and when we tested it in 2015, 17, 18, it's his. And the guilty knowledge we kept back on is not only did we have the unknown male's DNA, we had Tara's on it as well. Which shows you that Ryan Duke came in contact with Tara Grinstead. And it had to be before they burned the body. That's why that glove corroborates. And physical evidence doesn't lie to you. People will lie to you every day. Physical evidence does not. He confessed to making that phone call. Palm print on the glove. He confessed when he took them to the orchard. In fact, you'll remember in that video, the GBI 10 is already set up of where they're digging at the first location, as Todd Crosby told you about it, and he even walks by it. He says, no, it's not over there, it's going to be over here. If he was just going to agree with them, where it was and what was done, what's he going to do? Just agree with where they're already at? No, that's it. But no, he shows him and Jason at one point says, well, we'll just follow you. And he's not cognizant because he's taken Vicodin, Percocet, marijuana, all of these drugs, and he's out there walking in briars and everything else in slide shoes. In fact, even has the presence of mind to know that his pants are falling down and wants to pick him up because he doesn't like saggy pants. But he's blitzed out of his mind on all these drugs. Doing that. That's what they want you to believe. And you had two agents, Agent Shadell and Agent Holland, tell you he exhibited no signs of impairment. And you saw him on video. Doesn't slur his speech or unresponsive to questions. Sometimes he says he doesn't know. But he doesn't make up a crazy story that doesn't fit with the question. In fact, he corrects Agent Shadell according to the testimony of the GBI inspector yesterday. We corrected him 21 times. In that statement. They put Dr. Trelitsky up to say that he was blitzed out of his mind. And then he gets up there and tells you, after all that defense and theory, that, the statement, you can't believe it because he was on so many drugs. And Miss Merchant even told you in her closing statement, we don't even really know how many drugs he was on or what he was on or if he took a pain pill. We don't even know because he lies. He says on his statement, a pain pill this morning, and it's the afternoon when the interview goes. He says, a pain pill. He's already told you he's a drug addict, so his tolerance is going to be high. And he says, I'm fully cognitive. He confessed to you in his handwriting. He confessed to you with his actions of how showing you. You don't make that up if you didn't do it.
It's hard to afford it. It's hard to
Obviously, when you cremate a body, you know that you're the one responsible for
Yes,
that.
sir. I killed her. I mean, it's my fault. She's gone. I have no illusions about that.
I have no illusions about that. His words. His name. His confession. This is why you know he's guilty. Because and he also says in this statement, there's not a lot of blood at the house. If he thinks Bo Dukes killed her, and Bo Dukes didn't tell him how he killed her, because that's what he testified to, how's he going to know that there's not a lot of blood at the house? How do you know that? Unless you were there and you did it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you one other thing. The judge is going to charge you on party to the crime, someone directly or participates in it, that they're just as guilty as others. You may believe that Bo Dukes and Ryan went over there together and killed them together. You may believe that. And that's okay if you do. But it doesn't make his guilt any different. He's still as guilty, if not. And you may believe that Bo went in that house with him and they did it together. You may believe that. And that's okay. But it doesn't change that he's guilty too. The judge will charge you on parties to the crime. One knowing and directly committing or participating in is just as guilty as the other. Ms. Grinstead, they wanted to argue that this case was about power and influence. This killer, this murderer, right here in this chair, this Ryan Duke that confessed to you, that night in her home, he had all the power. Tara was powerless. He had all the influence that night. He's had all the influence over her family from 2005 to 2022. He's had the power and the influence. He did everything he could to erase the very memory of Tara Grinstead and who she was, the teacher that she was, the career that she was pursuing, the children that she was affecting. He took her from her sister, he took her from his mom, his stepmom, and her father. And he even tells you in his statement, I kept her from being a mom and a grandmother and enjoying life. I took that from her. He had the power. And he had the power over her in her house that night. He has had that influence over her and influence over her family as they have been tortured. You heard the desperation in Miss Faye's voice in those answering machine messages, the desperation in Heath Dyke's voice. This is what he's done. This is why his guilt was overwhelming. This is his character. He just hit it better than Doug. They're both thieves. And they're both enemies. And they're both burning fire. In fact, they wanted to erase Miss Grinstead's memory so much that they reduced her to a bone. They burned her body, a full skeleton, down to about 20 fragments of bone. A little piece of vertebra, cranium, and took the smile from beauty pageants and reduced her to a few teeth. They wanted to erase the memory of Tara Grinstead and who she was and what she had done so much that they burned her to just little pieces. We couldn't save Tara Grinstead in her home that night. We didn't have any power to save her. We didn't have any influence to save her that night in her home. He had that. And he took it from her. He took her soul from her. He took her life from her. One of God's souls. He took it from her. As he struck her with his hand and left her, he came back and got her body and took it out to the orchard where he got his friend to burn it. Burn it to a crisp where DNA can't even be extracted from. But today, in this courtroom, justice has the power. The law has the influence. And you as the jury have power to honor Tara's memory. You have the power to seek the truth and to do the right thing. They ask you to seek doubt. I ask you to be a truth seeker. The truth is, just as he told you in his confession, he murdered Tara Grinstead as he burglarized her home. He struck her, removing her life. And then to cover it up, he got her body out and took her to the orchard where he burned it beyond recognition. Today, Ocilla, Georgia, has had an influx of media since this has begun. And today, Ocilla, in Irwin County, are truth seekers. And you can honor Tara's memory. You have the power and influence today to honor her memory, to honor Mr. Billy, to honor Miss Connie, to honor Anita, to honor her mother. They wanted to reduce her memory to trash, in little pieces of pulp. But you can tell the media all over the United States and all over the world, from Ocilla, Irwinville, Lax, and Ray, and Mystic, that truth is what we do in Ocilla. When you seek a verdict, it speaks the truth today. There's only one verdict in this case that speaks the truth. And that verdict is for you to find this defendant in that chair guilty of being a murderer. That's the verdict that speaks the truth. And you let your verdict shine as bright as the fire they burned her with. And you find it guilty.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. We'll take a 5-minute indoor recess, come back for the charge, and then we'll break for lunch. If you'll please adjourn to the jury room, please.